The one thing that's really important to me is the idea of being open to other cultures, being really open-minded about meeting different kinds of people who are different than us, and that's something I've tried to work into the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Life of Dad Show. Here in the Life of Dad Show, we talk with athletes, actors, entrepreneurs, CEOs, musicians, entertainers who've all made a name for themselves, but the one thing that is most important to them is being a dad. In this edition of the Life of Dad Show Rewind, I'm taking you guys back to episode 131, where I talked with Sascha Paladino. Sascha Paladino is a writer and executive producer for different shows. Great guy. We talked about, at the time, fatherhood, and of course, his show on Disney Junior, Miles from Tomorrowland. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. So let's get into it. Here's the Life of Dad Show Rewind for this week with Sascha Paladino. Hey everybody, it's Art, Eddy, and Tom Riles for the Life of Dad Show, and we are very happy to have Sascha Paladino. Thanks for taking the time, Sascha. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, man. A lot of cool stuff we want to talk with you about, but first, got a new animated show called Miles from Tomorrowland, and kind of doing some research on you, we found that you actually came up with the initial concept a few months after the birth of your twin sons. What was it about your sons being born that kind of triggered the show idea?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest aspect of my sons being born was the fact that I had a total freak out and realized that I was going to be a dad, and not only that, but I was going to have two kids at once, and I kind of lost it. I was like, my life is over. How is this going to work? Like, what am I going to do? Before I had kids, my wife and I traveled a lot. We had kind of a lot of adventures, and we were all over the world. And I saw the only thing I could think was like, I'm never going to have another adventure again. It's all over. And I know that's like a horrible thing to say, but it's true. And, it soon turned into joy and happiness and all that. And of course, they're awesome. But that initial impulse led me to think, like, what's the best adventure you could have as a family? All right, I'm going to have a family. What's the greatest adventure I could ever have with them? And I started daydreaming, and my mind went to outer space, because it often does, and because I've always been obsessed with outer space and sci-fi, and that's what led to this show, Miles from Tomorrowland, just that idea of, like, the greatest adventure you could have with your family would be to be out in outer space, going on missions with them, and that's what the show's about.
That's fantastic. And the pilot was so much fun, too. I have two kids as well. My daughter is almost 5, and my son turned 3, and we've watched it at least 3 times, and we're still singing the song pretty much every morning. Miles, Miles from tomorrow. Like, my daughter will wake up singing it. So well done on that. And
that's great. I'm glad.
Yeah, excellent job on the pilot. And your kids are 5 years old now, which is really the perfect age for the show. Now, what in their daily life kind of leads to some of the story ideas, and do they help you come up with some of that stuff?
Oh yeah, they're great. My sons they just turned 5. Their names are Cole and Gianluca, and it's kind of amazing because when they were 3 months old when I pitched the show, and now that it's airing, it's 5. They're 5, so it tells you how long it takes to get a show on the air and made, and quite a journey. So they've really grown up with Miles. But yeah, a lot of their personalities are in the show. Miles is really kind of a creative thinker, out of the box, like looking at things, from kind of a strange angle. And my son Cole is just like that. Like, he'll take the Legos and make the craziest shape you could imagine. Whereas my son Gianluca is much more of a sort of scientific thinker. He'll follow the Lego directions exactly and make it look exactly like the box. And that part of that personality I put into Miles' sister, Loretta. One way of thinking isn't better than the other. They kind of complement each other. So it was really a nice balance to have both those personalities come out in the show. And Miles is our hero, but he and Loretta are, they're siblings. They work together, but they also argue, and that's definitely something that is in my family. As many families, siblings don't always get along, but they're family, and that creates a really deep, meaningful bond. And hopefully, what's special about the show is that the family's on these missions together, and that makes the missions even more meaningful because they're all together. And the mom's the captain, the dad's the pilot, and they all each have a job to do, and they do it well because they're a family.
Anytime you have the great Tom Kenny voicing your animated show, you're doing things right. And you also have Olivia Munn playing Miles' mom. Tell us a little bit about how you guys put this cast together.
Yeah, we were really lucky to have such an amazing cast. Tom Kenny, as you know, is the voice of SpongeBob and probably about 3,000 other characters.
Yeah.
And so he plays the dad. I had worked with him on another show for Disney Junior called Henry Hucklemonster, where he also plays the dad.
Yeah.
So he's my go-to dad, and he's just an amazing guy. Like he really has a lot of this character Leo in him. He's like a solid guy. He's a good dad. He's kind of laid back. He's not a guy who gets stressed out, and that's what I wanted for Miles as father. That he's sort of a zen. He's actually a surfer. Like back on Earth, he surfed, and in outer space, he likes to go surfing in outer space and stuff like that. And Tom was just perfect for it. And then the added bonus with Tom is he can play aliens as well. We have a lot of aliens that come up later in the season, and he does like the craziest voices you can imagine. And like we literally were working on an episode, and we were watching a scene, and I realized he was doing 4 different characters in that scene, and you would not know. I mean, there's no way you would know. The voices are so different. So he's just like on a whole other level. So that's amazing. And then the mom, Phoebe, she's the captain of the ship, kind of the captain of the family. You know, I think it's a good description for moms. They keep the ship running. And we were just really lucky that Olivia Munn was interested in doing an animated voice. And she's obviously been really into kind of the sci-fi scene and, you know, being on G4 and all that. So she sort of had this built-in sci-fi tech geek cred, which was perfect for us. And then she's just an awesome actress and a really nice person. So all of that has gone into her character, and you know, we're just really lucky. We've also been lucky enough to have other sci-fi related voice actors. Mark Hamill's doing a voice.
Nice.
George Takei
Yes.
from Star Trek, obviously. Will Wheaton from Next Generation. So it's really great to have feel like we have the DNA of Star Trek and Star Wars in our show, which of course were like so important to me growing up. And you know, even if kids don't quite know it, hopefully the parents will catch that in the credits, and some of the Force will be with us.
Just to quickly say, like, Mark Hamill is fantastic with the Joker and like Trickster and a lot of the other cartoon. And it's funny, a lot of people like thought after Luke Skywalker, you know, he wasn't doing that much stuff in the entertainment business. If you look at his IMDb, it's like ridiculous how much he's done. And I had a chance to interview him about obviously Star Wars and just, you know, his role of Joker, which I think put him on the map for voice acting. So again, kudos on such a great cast you got for that. Go ahead, Tom.
For sure, yeah. And going back to Olivia for a second, so I actually, in addition to heading up everything at Life of Dad, I work over the Ellen DeGeneres show, and we had Olivia on this past Thursday, actually.
Yeah,
she
I heard about that.
Yeah, Mordecai, and she is one of Ellen's favorite guests, and is just fantastic. So it must be a pretty cool group that you must have a lot of fun with them all every day. We
do, yeah. I mean, everyone gets into it, and it's just I just feel so lucky to be able to work with all of them. They're so talented and just cool people, you know.
Nice.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of creating a show, you know, coming up with a show, pitching the show? Was the animator already involved? Did you go straight to the network? I know there's a lot of people that work in television and film that listen to the show here. So just, you know, not the whole story, but maybe touch a little bit on what the process was like for this show for you.
Sure. So I went into Disney Junior with just a written pitch, no artwork, just this idea of a family in outer space working together on missions. And that was all I had. I can't draw, so that has never been my strong suit. I've worked as a writer in television for a while, and what I went in with was really the concept and the characters. And not a lot has changed since then. When Disney Junior said they were interested, that meant we would go ahead and start developing the show together. And so the next step was writing the pilot, which I did over the next year or so. So once we had a pilot script that everyone liked, then it was greenlit to be produced. So then we had a bunch of different artists do tests and come up with different styles for what Miles and his family might look like. And we found one that was really quirky, really felt different from what we'd seen before. After that, we had to search for an animation studio that would be able to pull it off, and we found a great studio called Wild Canary here in Burbank. I kind of think of it as like you're building your fantasy football team. You know, you're like you're getting the best players you can as you go, and then hopefully by the end you have this awesome team. And luckily that's what happened. That whole process from pitching it to making the pilot to greenlight of the show took 3 years, and then producing it, actually starting work on the show, to now when the show's about to air, it was another 2 years.
Wow, man. A lot of patience right there.
Yeah. Now, was that your full-time? Were you on that full-time all the way through, or were you still writing on other shows and such?
Yeah, I was still writing and producing other shows. The development process, you get a certain amount for that, but it's not something you can live on for that long, so you need to take on other work. It's interesting because one of the jobs that I had during that time while we were developing Miles was working on that other show I mentioned, Henry Hugglemonster, for Disney, and they asked if I would move to Ireland to work on it because that's where the animation studio was, and I said yes because it sounded like an amazing opportunity. My twins were 18 months old at the time, and that was a little crazy, but it was kind of exactly what I had been dreaming about because that was an adventure, that we went on as a family, going to Europe, just kind of living there and being in a different culture and figuring that out while having these two little kids who were running around and getting Irish accents. And and what I realized was that the adventures that you have with your family are even more amazing than you could have without them. And so that really, became a part of the show. I think moving to Europe during the time that I was developing Miles really affected Miles, and hopefully in a positive way.
Awesome, man. Love that. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I think, too, for us parents, Tommy has 2 kids. I have 2 daughters as well, and we got a chance to check out the show. We both love the pilot. And I think nowadays, certain shows kind of almost make kids grow up way too quick. And I think this one doesn't. I think I love the idea and what the morals behind it and all that. I think parents are looking for good shows that they can feel good to have their children watch. For you, what do you kind of want parents to know about this show?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I want parents to know that it's a solid nutritional meal for your kid, but it's also got a lot of fun too. It's not like, there's a science element. We have NASA consultants who help us. It's pretty amazing, figuring out how things work in outer space and what we know in outer space. And so there's one science fact per show, but really the emphasis is on the storytelling. It's about telling good stories with great characters, and I almost think of each episode as like a mini action movie, and I would say that's how Miles thinks of it too. Like Miles kind of sees himself as an action hero in his own movie every day. Every day is sort of like a new action sequence for him, and what I really wanted to do with the show was get that feeling across, and I hope that kids kind of get both things, that feeling of being immersed in this exciting story and also getting some science out of it. But also an important thing is the idea of family, and that's really the glue that holds it all together. The heart of the show is really the family's relationship.
Love it. Nice.
Absolutely, yeah, that's so important. We're both fathers, working fathers at the same time. I'm kind of curious, and we're switching to fatherhood now because this is going to be, of course, airing on Life of Dad and all that. What's your work-family balance like at this point? Is it challenging because you're in, full production mode now?
That's a great question. It is challenging. I bring my boys to school in the morning, to preschool, and then head straight to work. And then I'm at work usually till 7 or 8. If I'm lucky, sometimes later. But, it puts a lot on my wife to have to do dinner and get them ready at night, and it's hard. It's I don't know if there is a perfect balance.
Well
but,
said.
I feel lucky that I have a job where I get to show things that I'm working on to my kids, and sometimes they get to come into the office and draw on the computers, on the computer screens, and help the artists. I mean, not really help them, but think they're helping them. I feel lucky that I'm able to include my kids in my work. I know that's not always the case. The most important thing to me is when I go home at night and on the weekends that I turn off the computer and turn off the phone. It's hard to do when everyone's asking you questions and need something from you. It's just so clear when you don't give kids your full attention, and when you're at dinner and an email comes in and you check it, they know that you're not there 100%, and I've done it, and they're like, Dad, why aren't you looking at me? It breaks my heart, and it's like I'm hoping that this show works and successful and that a lot of kids connect with it, but if I can't connect with my own kids, then why am I doing it? So, it's trying to find that right balance.
Well said, man. 2 more questions on fatherhood before we go to the Life of Dad quick 5, because we know you're a busy guy. What are some of the morals you look to instill in your children as they grow up?
Oh, that's a thing I've thought about a lot, and I'm lucky because I get to think about that every day when I'm making, coming up with stories for the show. The one thing that's really important to me is the idea of being open to other cultures, being really open-minded about, meeting different kinds of people who are different than us. And that's something I've tried to work into the show, the idea that Miles and his family are on this intergalactic adventure, and they're making contact with other alien cultures that are really different from them. And how do you do that? There might not always be open as you are, and how do you what's the best way to navigate that? So that's something that's really important to me and how my kids are developing, and that I'm trying to work into the show as well.
Nice.
Excellent. And what advice do you have for new dads out there? So you're 5 years into the wonderful times but tough times at the same point.
Yeah.
Looking back, any advice you want to throw at new guys out there just getting into the game?
I'd say don't freak out like I did, if you can, but it probably doesn't matter because I'm sure there's a lot of freaking out happening. I'd say, it's important to make sure you have a good balance of time for yourself and time for you and your partner to be together, so that it's not all about the kid. I think you're a better parent when you can step away for a little while from your kid and then go back and just be 100% there.
Nice. Well said. Appreciate you talking about fatherhood and, of course, your great show, Miles from Tomorrowland. Of course, we're going to put links up for people to check it out at Life of Dad. Now we got the Life of Dad Quick 5. What is your favorite family movie you guys like to watch together?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nice. Excellent. Well done. Do you guys have like a favorite song, or do your kids, besides obviously the opening theme from Miles from Tomorrowland?
Well, they hear the Miles from Tomorrowland theme song. They've probably heard about 700 times, so has to be their favorite song if they don't have a choice. Yeah.
Nice. Like you said, you're a busy guy, but when you do have downtime with your family, what would be the perfect family vacation?
Perfect family vacation would be going to a faraway place, in sort of a new culture and exploring that new culture together.
Excellent. And kind of going on the cartoon side of things, what was your favorite cartoon when you were growing up?
My favorite cartoon was probably The Jetsons, which won't be a surprise.
I see no correlation with the show you're making then.
Not at all, yeah.
And lastly, ever think about using your own voice for maybe not this animated series, but just any animated series in general?
I would love to. I actually went to high school of performing arts, fame school, so I did study acting when I was a kid. I've done one voice on a cartoon. The first show I worked on was Blue's Clues, and I actually played a nurse. I played a male nurse named Nurse Kenny on that show, and that's my one voiceover claim to fame. On Blue's Clues episode, Blue Goes to the Doctor. I am the nurse.
Nice. Sasha, thanks so much for taking the time. People, make sure you check out Miles from Tomorrowland on Disney. Continued success with the show and everything you're doing, and we definitely love your take on fatherhood.
Thank you guys so much. I love your blog and your podcast, and I appreciate it.
All right, man. You take care now, okay?
You too, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Sasha.
Thanks so much for listening to the Life of Dad show. You know where to find us, lifeofdad.com, and on Twitter and Facebook.
Noise you couldn't quite locate or explain. Couldn't quite